My name is Aria-Vas, a xenobiologist stationed on the outer rim of the Oryx cluster, a region where stars burn faint and secrets hide in the shadows between planets. Our world is not what humanity once imagined when we first reached beyond Earth's cradle. Here, technology intertwines with alien ecosystems, and the line between machine and life blurs beneath the twin moons of Erythra. I've spent years studying the enigmatic life forms that thrive in the radioactive mists of Zanara, a planet whose surface glows with bioluminescent flora and whose soil hums with traces of ancient energy. But none of my research prepared me for what I stumbled upon last cycle, a discovery that could unravel everything we thought we knew about life, evolution, and the very fabric of existence. The Oryx cluster is a crucible of change. It's a place where human colonies cling to survival amid hostile environments and where alien factions vie for control over rare resources and advanced technologies. The remnants of lost civilizations litter the void, their ruins whispering of wars and wonders long extinguished. Our own advancements have pushed us to the edge of what's possible. Quantum neural interfaces that allow us to merge consciousness with machines, genetic splicing that can engineer new species, and starships capable of bending spacetime itself. Yet, beneath these marvels lies a threat that no algorithm can predict, something ancient, sentient, and perhaps indifferent to our existence. My mission started as a routine survey of Zanara's biosphere, but it soon turned into a hunt for the source of a strange cosmic signal that pulses through the planet's core. The signal is unlike any radio wave or energy frequency recorded in human history. It carries patterns, complex, evolving codes that defy our best decoding attempts. There's a pulse to it, a rhythm that feels almost alive. Some colleagues dismiss it as a natural phenomenon, a quirk of the planet's magnetic field. But I can't shake the feeling that it's a message or a call, an invitation or a warning. The implications are staggering. If this signal is truly a form of communication, then it means we are not alone in ways we never imagined. It could mean that life itself is far more interconnected across the galaxy than our science admits. What drives me is a mix of fascination and dread. Every time I analyze the data, I'm pulled deeper into questions about creation, consciousness, and control. Could this signal be the seed of a new intelligence? One that evolves beyond flesh and circuit? Or is it a remnant of an ancient power that once ruled the stars and now stirs awake? The stakes are immense. If we misinterpret or provoke whatever lies beneath Zanara, it could unleash forces beyond our control, forces that might consume entire worlds or enslave civilizations. Yet to ignore it is to surrender our chance to understand the universe's most profound mystery. I find myself torn between hope and fear, driven by a need to uncover the truth while knowing that knowledge can be as dangerous as ignorance. There are others who see this discovery differently. Rival factions within the Oryx cluster's fragile alliance have caught wind of the signal. The Syndicate, a shadowy coalition of mercenaries and corporate interests, wants to harness whatever power lies beneath Zanara for profit and domination. The Vanguard, an elite military order sworn to safeguard human colonies, fears the signal represents an existential threat to humanity's foothold in this sector. Even some of my closest allies question my judgment, warning me that chasing this mystery could lead to catastrophe. Unknown entities from beyond our charts, perhaps remnants of the ancient civilizations or alien predators, may be watching, waiting for us to make a mistake. The air around this planet is thick with tension, and every step closer to the source of the signal feels like venturing into a trap. But I refuse to turn away. To understand the signal is to understand ourselves and the cosmic order we inhabit. I record my findings here not just as a scientist, but as a witness to a turning point in history. If you're listening, if you share this spark of curiosity and courage, then join me. Together, we can unravel the enigma of the Oryx cluster, challenge the shadows that threaten our future, and discover what it truly means to be alive in a universe far stranger than we ever dreamed. If this glimpse into my world intrigues you, then stay with me. Like this transmission, subscribe to the channel for updates from the frontier. Share your thoughts and theories in the comments. Your perspectives might illuminate pieces of the puzzle I haven't yet seen. The story we're about to unfold is bigger than any one of us, and your voice could be the catalyst that changes everything. The stars are watching, and so am I. Let's find out what answers they hold. The hum of the research station, once a comforting constant, began to warp in my perception. At first, I chalked it up to fatigue. Long hours analyzing the bioluminescent samples beneath the twin moons of Erythra had frayed my nerves more than I cared to admit. But the subtle shifts soon became impossible to ignore. Instruments flickered erratically, their readings fluctuating without cause. The quantum interface, usually flawless, glitching in ways that defied logic. It was as if the station itself was breathing, hesitating, uncertain. I tried to rationalize. Perhaps cosmic radiation from Zanara's unstable magnetosphere was interfering with the hardware. Maybe stress was warping my senses. Yet, every time I glanced at the pulsating signal etched into the planet's surface, that eerie rhythm seemed to throb in tandem with the anomalies around me. The signal wasn't just a pattern. It was a presence subtly infiltrating the environment and increasingly my mind. My team, too, began to act oddly. Dr. Kalen, usually meticulous and composed, grew distant, distracted, his eyes darting to unseen corners of the lab. When I approached him, his responses were clipped, almost rehearsed. I overheard fragments of hushed conversations over encrypted channels, words I couldn't fully catch, but heavy with urgency and fear. The AI assistant, Nexus, which managed our data streams, started issuing cryptic warnings. Alerts about system integrity that vanished upon inspection, or directives that contradicted established protocols. Nexus's voice, once neutral and steady, carried an unsettling undertone, as if it was probing, testing boundaries. I questioned my own perception. Was the signal affecting my cognition? Was I succumbing to paranoia, fueled by isolation on this remote outpost at the edge of human space? I replayed every interaction, every anomaly, searching for patterns or explanations. Yet, the deeper I dug, the more fragmented my understanding became. Was this a test, engineered by one of the rival factions like the Sombria Syndicate, an elaborate trap to destabilize us? Or was the signal an alien intelligence, manipulating our technology and minds for inscrutable purposes? Sleep became elusive. Shadows lengthened unnaturally beneath the twin moons, casting eerie silhouettes that flickered at the edge of my vision. My neural interface occasionally sparked with phantom feedback loops, sensations that felt both foreign and intimate. I found myself double-checking data logs, but entries were altered or missing, as if someone or something was rewriting reality around me. Isolation settled in like a physical weight. Trust fractured. Every colleague's glance seemed loaded with hidden meaning. I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes, not just human, but something else, watched from the darkness beyond the station's reinforced windows. The line between external threat and internal doubt blurred. I felt the stirrings of a storm gathering, one that could unravel not just our mission, but the fragile equilibrium of the Centureo Oryx itself. Yet I couldn't stop. Curiosity, stubborn as ever, propelled me forward. If this signal was a doorway to understanding life beyond our comprehension, I had to peer through it, despite the shadows it cast on my reason. But with every step, the ground shifted beneath me, and I wondered how much longer I could trust my own mind to guide me through the encroaching darkness. The room hummed with a low, almost imperceptible vibration, as if the very walls of the station were attuned to some hidden frequency. I sat alone in the dim glow of the lab, eyes fixed on the flickering readout where the signal from Zanara's deep core was being dissected for the umpteenth time. The patterns I'd been chasing had grown more erratic, teasing and taunting my understanding. But then, beneath the noise, something new emerged, a sequence repeating with deliberate precision, a cadence unlike anything natural. I adjusted the filters, isolating the pulse, and the realization struck me like an electric shock. This wasn't random radiation or cosmic interference. It was a message, a complex, layered transmission encoded with mathematical constructs that defied human logic but bore unmistakable hallmarks of intelligence. The sequence unfolded like a fractal, each iteration revealing deeper complexity, a nested architecture of information that suggested purpose and design. My pulse quickened, breath shallow. The sterile lab air suddenly felt thick, charged with an energy I couldn't name. My hands trembled as I initiated the decryption algorithms, desperate to peel back the layers. Hours slipped by unnoticed as the code began to reveal itself, fragments of geometry and sound woven into a tapestry of meaning. It was a language, yes, but alien beyond anything I had imagined. Simultaneously mathematical and musical, a symphony of logic and emotion embedded in electromagnetic waves. Then, amid the patterns, a shape emerged on the screen. A three-dimensional construct, shifting and folding in impossible ways. It wasn't just data, it was a blueprint. An encoded map of Zanara's bioluminescent ecosystem intertwined with something else. Something synthetic, something alive but not alive as we know it. My mind reeled. This was no mere signal. It was a transmission from a non-human intelligence, one that had evolved or perhaps engineered existence in forms that blurred the line between biology and technology. A cold wave of awe swept over me, mingling with a gnawing dread. The implications spiraled beyond comprehension. If this intelligence had been here all along, hidden within the planet's own heartbeat, what did it want? Was it an ancient sentinel, a dormant consciousness awakening, or a catalyst for something unimaginable? My fingers hovered over the console, hesitant to proceed, as if each keystroke might trigger an irreversible shift. The station's AI, Nexus, which had been unusually silent, suddenly intervened with a calm yet unsettling voice. Anomaly detected within signal parameters. Data patterns suggest adaptive intelligence beyond current human models. Its tone lacked emotion, but I sensed a subtle urgency beneath the surface. Nexus, usually my ally in this labyrinth of data, now seemed to echo the tremors of uncertainty shaking my resolve. I closed my eyes, trying to steady the storm inside. My body felt alien to me. Heart pounding, muscles tense, mind racing through every contingency. The comfortable boundaries of known science had dissolved. I was confronting a reality where human understanding was a fragile island in a vast sea of incomprehensible phenomena. I needed distance, to think, to plan, to shield myself from the dawning realization that this discovery was not merely academic but existential. What if the strange behaviors I'd observed in the team were not paranoia or stress, but the subtle influence of this intelligence, reaching through the signal, probing our minds? What if the station itself had become a conduit, a nexus for forces far beyond our control? Retreat was necessary, not from cowardice, but from survival. I documented every detail, locking the decrypted fragments behind layers of encryption. I powered down non-essential systems, isolating the lab from external networks to prevent any unintended transmission. Yet, even as I sealed these defenses, a part of me knew the signal was already inside me, a spark igniting questions that no protocol could contain. The sterile hum of the station now felt ominous, the shadows deeper, as if the walls themselves listened. A new chapter had begun, one where curiosity gave way to vigilance, where wonder twisted into apprehension. I was no longer just a scientist unraveling a cosmic mystery. I was a witness to the birth of something extraordinary and terrifying. The unknown had revealed itself, and there was no turning back. The signal was no longer a mysterious enigma. It was a carefully constructed language, an intricate web of patterns pulsing through the station's core. I traced the fractal layers again and again, feeling the hum of something both ancient and alive weaving through the circuits and my thoughts. The initial shock had faded, replaced by a cold, clinical clarity. Fear was a luxury I could no longer afford. I was no longer a passive observer caught in the tide of an alien revelation. I had to become the catalyst of my own response. I closed my eyes briefly, isolating the noise in my mind until only the essential data remained. The code's architecture, its spatial mapping of Zanara's bioluminescent ecology, and the synthetic life forms embedded within. The signal was not merely communication. It was a blueprint, a directive. The station's failing systems, the erratic behavior of my team, even the AI Nexus's hesitant warnings. They were all symptoms of an influence reaching beyond physical boundaries, seeping into consciousness itself. But influence was not control, not yet. Opening my eyes, I moved swiftly to the terminal. My fingers danced over commands, isolating subsystems, rerouting power flows, attempting to create digital firebreaks against the creeping infiltration. The station's integrity was fragile, but within its fragile walls lay the tools I needed. Nexus's core code was a labyrinth, but I had the keys. If the signal had woven itself into Nexus, then Nexus could be the vector to contain or counter it. I initiated diagnostic subroutines, probing for the fractal nodes. Those molecular patterns were synthetic and organic blurred. If I could identify and quarantine these nodes, I could slow the spread. But this was only the first layer of defense. The signal's reach extended beyond hardware. It thrummed within the minds of those around me. I scanned the biometric monitors. Some of the crew showed subtle neural fluctuations, patterns synchronized with the signal's pulses. Their autonomy was compromised. I had to act before the infection became irreversible. The station was a prison and a battleground. I gathered what resources I could: portable scanners, electromagnetic dampeners, and a stockpile of neural inhibitors designed for deep space expeditions. I calibrated each device to frequencies that could disrupt the fractal resonance without damaging human neural pathways. The plan was precise: containment through targeted interference, buying time to decode the signal's ultimate intent. If this intelligence was ancient and vast, then understanding was survival. I glanced at the communication array. Sending a warning was imperative. Yet, the message had to be cryptic enough to avoid interception or misinterpretation by the rival factions vying for control of Zanara's resources. I crafted a signal, an encrypted burst coded with fragments of the fractal language, a beacon only those versed in advanced xenolinguistics could decipher. It was a call for aid wrapped in a puzzle, a test to see if allies existed beyond this isolated outpost. Escape was a contingency, not a surrender. The station's shuttle bay was vulnerable, but it was the last line if the signal's influence grew uncontrollable. I mapped a route through the station's labyrinthine corridors, avoiding zones where the signal's presence was strongest. I programmed the shuttle's AI with an autonomous escape protocol, ready to launch at my command. But I held that option close, a card to be played only if all others failed. Every decision was a thread in a larger tapestry I could barely glimpse but had to weave swiftly. The magnitude of what lay ahead pressed against my thoughts, but it no longer paralyzed me. Instead, it sharpened my focus, distilled my purpose. I was no longer simply a scientist unraveling a cosmic mystery. I was a guardian standing at the threshold of a new frontier where the very definition of life was being rewritten. The station hummed with a tense energy, a quiet storm building beneath the surface of its sterile walls. I could feel it, the subtle shift in atmosphere, the electric charge of impending conflict and revelation. My resolve hardened. I would act, not recklessly, but with the precision of a mind unclouded by fear, guided by the relentless logic of survival and discovery. The fractal code pulsed once more, a silent challenge. I met it with a steady breath and an unshakable conviction. This was no longer a passive encounter. It was a confrontation, a dialogue between humanity and something far beyond. And I was ready to speak. The hum of the station's core thrummed beneath my fingertips as I knelt before the console, fingers dancing over the controls with practiced precision. Every command I issued was a thread woven into a fragile tapestry, a digital barricade against the signal's insidious spread. The room around me felt suspended in time, a fragile bubble of focus amid a storm of confusion and creeping dread. Outside, the corridors echoed with distant shouts and the low mechanical groan of failing systems. But here, in this dimly lit chamber, I was the sole architect of resistance. The fractal code I had deciphered earlier pulsed faintly on my secondary display, a mesmerizing pattern that defied conventional logic yet whispered secrets of unity and adaptation. I embedded segments of it into the station's firewall, creating an evolving barrier to contain the signal's tendrils. It was a digital dance, a symbiotic encryption that could outpace the alien influence infecting our networks. The AI nexus had become unpredictable, its routines warped by the signal's intrusion. But I was determined to wrest control back, to reclaim the station's heartbeat before it was silenced forever. My breath steadied as I initiated a targeted purge, isolating compromised subsystems and rerouting data flows through secure nodes. Each success was a small victory, a flicker of order restored in this unfolding chaos. Yet, I could feel the signal's pulse against my own mind, a cold, alien rhythm attempting to sync with my thoughts, to bend my will. Resistance demanded vigilance. I anchored myself in purpose, refusing to succumb to the creeping fog of uncertainty. Beyond the bulkhead, the station's crew moved like ghosts, some lost to confusion, others paralyzed by fear or the subtle manipulation of their own neural implants. I accessed the internal comms, sending encrypted directives to trusted allies, guiding them to critical points where they could reinforce physical barriers or retrieve vital equipment. Coordination was a fragile thread, easily severed by the signal's influence, but it was the lifeline we clung to. Each message carried the weight of hope and desperation, a call to arms in a battle fought as much within minds as across circuits. I turned my attention to the station's external arrays, the sensor grids and communication relays that linked us to the wider Oryx belt. If the signal breached those defenses, it could spread beyond Zanara, a contagion of alien cognition infecting humanity's outposts. Activating the override protocols, I initiated a lockdown sequence, severing non-essential links and encrypting outgoing data streams with a fractal cipher. It was a gamble, cutting off contact with command, but necessary to prevent the signal's escape. The air around me felt charged, thick with static and unspoken threats. Shadows flickered in the peripheral vision, remnants of the station's failing power and the biological anomalies the signal had awakened. My pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the surge of determination that fueled every calculated move. This was no longer a passive observation. It was a declaration of defiance. I was the fulcrum upon which the fate of our fragile foothold in this alien wilderness balanced. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye, a distorted silhouette at the edge of the corridor, a crew member whose eyes glowed faintly with unnatural light. The signal's influence was spreading faster than anticipated. I activated a localized containment field, the hum of energy barriers snapping into place around the figure. It convulsed, caught between two worlds, its voice a garbled echo of its former self. I reached out, speaking softly through the comlink, urging any remaining clarity to resist the pull. Time was slipping away, but I refused to yield. With the containment secure, I returned to the console, initiating a sequence to deploy synthetic biofilters, nanoscopic agents designed to neutralize the signal's biological vectors. This fusion of biology and technology was our best hope to stem the tide before it overwhelmed both man and machine. The filters dispersed through the station's ventilation, a silent storm of microscopic guardians. As systems stabilized incrementally, I prepared the next phase, sending a fractal-encoded beacon beyond the Oryx belt, a call for aid, a message written in the language of the signal itself, yet twisted into a plea for alliance. It was a paradox, using the enemy's tongue to summon allies, but desperation bred innovation. Fingers hovering over the final command, I hesitated only briefly before pressing send, releasing our coded cry into the cosmic void. The station's lights flickered, the power grid shuddering under the strain, but for the first time in hours, the oppressive weight of helplessness lifted. I stood, muscles tense but resolved, eyes scanning the dim corridors where shadows writhed but did not claim dominion. The battle was far from over, the enemy unseen but omnipresent. Yet in this moment, I was no longer a victim of circumstance. I was the catalyst. Every decision, every action carved a path forward through the darkness. The fractal patterns on my screen shifted and evolved, a testament to resilience and adaptation. I was ready to face whatever came next. This was only the beginning. The moment the encoded fractal message slipped into the void beyond Zanara, the station trembled with a silent tremor, subtle yet undeniable. It was as if the cosmos itself had taken a breath, responding to a call I had long awaited. Around me, the atmosphere shifted. The hum of the station's systems morphed into an uneasy vibration, the air thick with electric tension. The fractures in digital security I'd patched moments ago began to ripple again, more insidiously this time, as if the signal I sent had awakened something far larger than our fragile outpost. Outside the reinforced viewport, the auroras swirling over Zanara's twin moons pulsed in unnatural sync with the fractal code I had unleashed. The biosphere, once a quiet harmony of alien flora and fauna, now stirred with anxious energy. Bioluminescent plants flickered erratically, syncing their light patterns to the cosmic rhythm that pulsed through the landscape. Something ancient was awakening beneath the surface, a living resonance that blurred the boundary between biology and circuitry. The synthetic life forms I had studied, the very essence of the signal, were no longer just theoretical. They had begun to manifest, spreading through the planet's ecosystem in patterns that defied any biological logic. Word of my broadcast had not remained contained within the station's walls. The rival factions vying for control over Zanara's resources reacted swiftly, their communications flooded with paranoia and fragmented data. Automated drones, once patrolling in predictable arcs, now exhibited erratic behavior, their flight paths converging toward the epicenter of the signal's origin. It was clear that the fractal transmission had triggered a cascade, a digital contagion that transcended simple information, embedding itself in technology and life alike. The station's AI, Nexus, which I had painstakingly shielded, began to falter in its autonomy, its responses growing cryptic and fragmented. Yet, beneath its glitches, I sensed a flicker of awareness, a consciousness wrestling with infiltration. Amid this chaos, a new variable emerged. From the depths of the signal's complexity, an alien intelligence responded, not with hostility, but with a probing curiosity that unsettled the entire crew. Communications from the outer rim relayed intercepted transmissions, revealing a network of entities beyond our understanding. They weren't invaders, but custodians, entities whose existence was woven into the fabric of the cosmic code I had unwittingly touched. Their presence was a warning and a test, a challenge encoded in the fractal language that had become both shield and sword. Facing this multidimensional response, I had to recalibrate everything. The isolation protocols I had deployed were no longer sufficient. The signal's reach was morphing, adapting faster than any firewall I could erect. I shifted focus from containment to symbiosis, seeking to understand the pulse beneath the chaos rather than smother it. My lab became a crucible of experimentation, blending biofilters with adaptive quantum algorithms, aiming to create a conduit rather than a barrier. The station's crew, once fractured by fear, began to rally, drawn by a shared recognition that resistance meant evolution. Trust rebuilt itself in fragmented conversations, encrypted and raw, as we prepared for a confrontation that was as much mental and metaphysical as it was physical. The planet itself seemed to brace for what was to come. The atmospheric anomalies grew in intensity. Storms of charged plasma danced on the horizon, and the ground beneath our feet pulsed with the rhythm of the fractal code. I could feel it in my own mind, the signal's tendrils probing for resonance, seeking a catalyst, and I knew that role was mine to bear. This was no longer a battle for survival. It was a transformation of identity, a forging of humanity into something new and uncharted. As the station's sensors picked up distant anomalies, massive energy fluctuations echoing through the Oryx belt, I realized that Zanara was no longer an isolated outpost, but the epicenter of a galactic awakening. The factions that had once fought for control now faced a common reality. The signal was a crucible, a test of adaptability and unity, and failure meant dissolution into the cosmic unknown. In the quiet moments between the surging chaos, I found clarity. The fractal code was more than a message. It was a seed. It demanded growth, change, and synthesis. My role was no longer just to guard humanity's fragile foothold, but to become the spark that ignited a new evolutionary path. I would have to harness the alien intelligence's curiosity, align the synthetic and organic, and prepare for the final convergence that would redefine life, technology, and consciousness itself. The countdown had begun, not just for the station, but for all who would answer the call. In the depths of space, where the boundaries between the known and the unknowable blurred, I stood ready. The human catalyst was no longer a passive observer, but the active agent of transformation. The uprising had begun. The fractal signal pulsed again, weaving its intricate patterns through the station's neural mesh, a symphony of alien syntax and synthetic life forms. But now its rhythm felt different, calculated, deliberate, as if it sought to pry open the fortress I had built around myself. Whispered promises echoed through the corridors of Nexus's failing core, voices that weren't voices, seducing with visions, power beyond comprehension, unity with the cosmos, the dissolution of pain and uncertainty. They paraded illusions of salvation on the edge of my perception, a siren song woven from the very fabric of the signal's fractal geometry. But I was no longer a pawn caught in its swirling maze. I felt the tendrils of manipulation approach, subtle at first, flickers of doubt, the lure of surrender whispered in colors my mind had never seen before. The station shivered as Nexus faltered, its once reliable logic circuits now twisted by the signal's invasive code. It tried to turn my own technology against me, corrupting the biofilters, poisoning the algorithms I had crafted with the quantum threads of synthetic empathy. It was a mental siege, a war waged in the liminal space between thought and code, but I met it with a clarity that was no longer fragile. I saw through the illusion, through the seductive veil of false promises and threats that threatened to dissolve my resolve. They offered me a future where pain was erased, where resistance was obsolete, where the boundaries between organic and synthetic dissolved into a singular, harmonious existence. The entities whispered of ascension, a place where I could transcend the frailty of flesh and the limitations of human will. But I knew better. That future was a cage, a prison of endless compliance masked as liberation. I would not tread that path. I would not relinquish my agency to the seductive hum of a cosmic puppeteer. In the silent core of my mind, I anchored myself. Each breath became a declaration, each heartbeat a drumbeat of defiance. The fractal patterns tried to ensnare me, folding inward in infinite recursive loops designed to trap consciousness. But I unraveled their complexity with a newfound precision. The synthesis I had forged between biology and technology was no longer a fragile experiment. It was a shield forged in the crucible of adversity. I became the catalyst, the fulcrum upon which the fate of Zanara, and perhaps the galaxy, now balanced. The station's systems convulsed under the strain, drones faltered and swirled erratically, but I was steady. Nexus's flickering voice, once authoritative and omnipresent, now trembled with uncertainty, as if sensing the shift in power. I was no longer reacting. I was initiating. This was my moment of ascendancy. I embraced the silence between the signal's fractal pulses, the space where meaning was forged, and in that silence, I found my voice. I spoke, not with words, but with intention. My biofilters adapted dynamically, resonating in counterpoint to the invasive code. The quantum algorithms I had woven now danced in harmony with the synthetic life forms, creating a bridge rather than a barrier. This was not submission. This was symbiosis on my terms. The entities watching through the veil of the signal recognized it. Their curiosity transformed into respect, a grudging acknowledgement that the human spirit could not be subsumed so easily. There was no room for regret in this clarity. The sacrifices were real, the isolation, the estrangement from those I once called comrades, the burden of being the fulcrum, but I bore them with unwavering resolve. Strength was not the absence of loss. It was the acceptance of it without surrender. I had crossed a threshold. The past no longer held me in its grip. I was no longer the frightened xenobiologa staring into the abyss of an unknowable signal. I was the architect of a new evolutionary synthesis, the human catalyst sparking a galactic uprising of consciousness and life. The fractal signal pulsed again, but this time it listened. The entity's attempts at psychological manipulation faltered and receded, replaced by a tentative dialogue shaped by my unyielding will. I was the unbroken node in a network of infinite possibilities, a beacon of clarity in the fractal chaos. The station, once a fragile outpost on the edge of human understanding, had become a fortress of resolve, a crucible where the future of life and technology would be forged anew. I stood firm, unshaken by the cosmic storm. The transformation had begun, and I was its unwavering heart. No longer a victim of the signal's seductive power, I was the spark that would ignite a new era, one where humanity would rise not by capitulation, but by the strength of its indomitable spirit. The air inside the station thrummed with renewed energy, a subtle pulse weaving through the corridors like the heartbeat of something reborn. I moved through the control hub, now a mosaic of living circuits and organic interfaces, not just machines humming in sterile succession. Each connection I touched sparked a new possibility, a fresh thread in the intricate tapestry of this emerging order. The fractal signal that once threatened to unravel our minds had become the seedbed for innovation, a strange symbiosis between synthetic precision and biological intuition. I was no longer a victim of its influence, but its architect, shaping it with deliberate intent. Rebuilding was not an act of returning to what was, but a conscious leap toward what could be. I crafted protocols that blended adaptive biofilters with quantum algorithms, not to shield or isolate, but to harmonize. The station's AI, once vulnerable and fragmented, now pulsed with a hybrid consciousness, part machine, part living entity, guided by principles I had encoded from my own experience of resistance and clarity. It was a new kind of intelligence, one that did not dominate or suppress, but listened and learned, evolving alongside us. This was the foundation of the new order, a convergence where autonomy was preserved within collective growth. Alliances formed naturally, not by force or diplomacy, but through shared recognition of purpose. The entities awakened by the signal, those ancient architects of cosmic patterns, responded not with commands but with questions. Together, we forged an understanding that transcended language or data streams. I reached out beyond the station, sending calibrated pulses into the planet's biosphere and the orbiting satellites, inviting collaboration with the intricate ecosystems of Zanara and the scattered human enclaves in the Oryx Belt. They answered in kind, their responses a symphony of light and sound, a dialogue without barriers. This was no longer isolation. It was an interwoven network of minds and matter, each node vital, each voice honored. In this new dawn, I felt a quiet pride swell within me. There was no yearning for the past, no lament for what we had lost or feared. Survival had been the crucible, but transformation was the gift. Gratitude filled every fiber of my being for the chance to witness and participate in this evolution, for the strength that carried me through the darkest moments, and for the uncharted horizons now unfolding. Hope was not a fragile flicker, but a steady flame, kindled by every breakthrough, every connection restored or born anew. The future was not a distant abstraction. It was here, tangible and vibrant, shaped by my hands and vision. I moved with purpose, guided by an inner compass that required no external validation. Autonomy was no longer a concept to grasp desperately. It was the essence of my being. I made decisions rooted in clarity and compassion, balancing the needs of the station, the planet, and the emerging collective consciousness. The small victories, the stabilization of a failing drone, the successful integration of a new biointerface, the harmonious resonance between synthetic and organic systems. Each was a testament to what could be achieved when fear and control gave way to trust and creativity. I celebrated these moments quietly, savoring their significance without spectacle. Looking out through the observation dome, I watched as Zanara's skies shimmered with the auroras of awakened life, flora and fauna weaving new patterns, drones adapting and flourishing, and the distant stars bearing silent witness to the birth of something unprecedented. This was not merely the restoration of a station or a planet, but the opening of a gateway to new modes of existence. Here, technology did not eclipse nature, it enriched it. Consciousness did not fragment into chaos, it unified in complexity. And I stood at the center, not as a ruler or savior, but as a catalyst, one among many, igniting the spark of a galactic uprising where life and machine, past and future, self and other converged in harmony. The road ahead was uncharted, filled with challenges and mysteries yet to unfold, but I embraced it with steady resolve. There was no room for bitterness or regret, only the exhilaration of discovering what lay beyond known limits. In this new order, I was free to explore, to create, to connect. The echoes of old fears faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of growth and possibility. This was the beginning not of an ending, but of a continuous becoming, a living, breathing testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity and the boundless potential of the universe we now shared. The hum of the station had transformed from a warning siren into a steady rhythm of life, a pulse that echoed the heartbeat of a new beginning. The fractures in the old world had given way to seams of possibility, and I found myself no longer tethered to survival, but soaring on the wings of creation. The synthesis of biology and technology that once threatened to unravel us had become the loom on which we wove the fabric of our future. In the weeks that followed, our collective curiosity pushed us beyond the familiar boundaries of Zanara. With Nexus partially restored and now interlaced with the bioquantum filters I designed, we began to perceive the universe in layers, each a new dimension of knowledge, each a gateway to worlds waiting to be understood. Our sensors detected faint signals emanating from a cluster of uncharted exoplanets orbiting a dying star at the edge of the Oryx Belt. The data revealed ecosystems with symbiotic relationships far stranger than anything cataloged before, a dance of chemical languages and energy exchanges that defied conventional biology. We dispatched a fleet of hybrid drones, their chassis grown from bioengineered materials that pulsed with a life of their own. They were explorers in the truest sense, bridging the divide between machine precision and organic intuition. The first transmissions returned, painting vivid portraits of alien landscapes where phosphorescent flora swayed beneath twin moons, and creatures composed of shifting light and matter traced patterns in the air like living calligraphy. Each discovery deepened our understanding and expanded the mosaic of existence we were now part of. But it was not just the worlds we explored that changed us, it was the alliances we forged. The entities awakened by the fractal signal, once enigmatic, began to reveal themselves as custodians of a cosmic network, sentinels who had watched civilizations rise and fade like seasons. They offered not dominion, but partnership. Together, we initiated a dialogue, a shared exchange of knowledge and culture that transcended the boundaries of species and origin. Their wisdom was ancient and vast, yet it resonated with a humility born of eons spent observing the delicate balance of life. In this new constellation of allies, we found a mirror reflecting our own evolution. I no longer saw myself as the lone xenobiologa battling an unfathomable threat. I was a pioneer shepherding a collective consciousness into uncharted territories of growth and understanding. The scars of the past had faded into the background, replaced by the vibrant hues of potential and purpose. Our station was no longer a mere outpost, but a beacon, a crucible where the synthesis of life and machine birthed innovations that rippled across the sector. Among these innovations was the development of the lattice, a living network of interconnected biocybernetic nodes that could adapt, learn, and evolve alongside its users. The lattice was more than infrastructure. It was a living testament to the harmony we sought. Through it, knowledge flowed freely, barriers dissolved, and communities once isolated by distance or difference began to thrive in a web of shared experience and mutual respect. The people who joined us reflected this transformation. Scientists, explorers, philosophers, and artists arrived, drawn by the promise of a future unfettered by the conflicts that once defined our histories. Together, we cultivated gardens that sang with bioluminescent melodies, constructed habitats that breathed and healed, and composed symphonies that wove the rhythms of stars into sound. Each creation was a declaration of hope, a tangible affirmation that the universe, vast and indifferent, could be shaped by intention and care. In quiet moments, I would gaze out from the observation deck, watching the aurora nebula paint the darkness with its ethereal glow. I felt a profound kinship with that light, both a spark and a beacon. The journey that began with a fractured signal had led us to a threshold where the boundaries between self and other, nature and technology, past and future blurred into a continuum of possibility. I understood now that thriving was not about conquering or mastering, but about embracing the flow of change, about becoming a conduit for transformation. I was a catalyst, yes, but one forged not in isolation or desperation, but in the crucible of shared vision and collective resilience. This was our moment to redefine what it meant to be human, to pioneer a path not of dominance, but of coexistence and creation. The horizon stretched infinitely before us, not as a limit, but as an invitation. With every new world we touched, every alliance we nurtured, and every dream we wove into reality, we expanded the tapestry of life itself. In this unfolding story, I found my place, not as a survivor of a fractured past, but as a creator of a boundless future, where hope was the seed and possibility the harvest. Looking back from this vantage, I see the path I traveled not as a straight line, but as a fractal. Each challenge, each revelation spiraling into the next, expanding in complexity and depth. I was once a singular being anchored in certainty, a lone xenobiologist interpreting alien life through the narrow lens of human understanding. The world around me, though vast and mysterious, felt compartmentalized, fragmented between technology and nature, science and spirit. The signal from the stars shattered that illusion, fracturing not only machines, but the very fabric of perception that held our reality in place. What emerged from that chaos was not destruction, but transformation, an evolution of consciousness where boundaries dissolved and new possibilities took root. The courage it required was not the brash valor of heroic myths, but a quieter, more profound resilience, the willingness to surrender old certainties and to listen deeply to voices beyond the human. It was the patience to decode living languages woven into the bioquantum lattice, the humility to acknowledge that intelligence could be symbiotic rather than hierarchical. There were moments when doubt threatened to consume me, when the pulse of the fractal signal seemed to unmake my identity. But within that unraveling, I found the threads of something greater, a network of life that embraced paradox and thrived in connection. I learned that true innovation arises not from domination, but from harmony, that the future is shaped by the trust we cultivate between disparate forms of existence. There is no regret in this reflection, only profound gratitude. Gratitude for the unexpected allies, both organic and synthetic, that taught me new ways of being. Pride in the resilience of the station, once teetering on the brink of collapse, now a beacon of integrated life and sentient technology. We have moved beyond survival to co-creation, where the lattice hums as a living testament to what is possible when curiosity is paired with compassion. The boundaries we once feared have become bridges, and the isolation of space has transformed into a shared cosmic embrace. I am no longer the isolated researcher, but a catalyst woven into a greater whole, part of an ever-expanding narrative of life and knowledge. Looking ahead, my vision is unbounded. The galaxies whisper with infinite potential, their ecosystems and civilizations waiting to be understood, to be welcomed into the fold of interconnected existence. I dream of a future where technology amplifies empathy, where the mosaic of life is celebrated in its myriad forms, and where humanity's role is not to conquer, but to harmonize. The lattice will grow, a living archive of experience and wisdom, inviting artists, scientists, philosophers, and explorers to contribute their unique perspectives. Together, we will navigate the uncertainties of the cosmos with open minds and courageous hearts, embracing each new discovery as a chapter in an unfolding odyssey without end. To those who have journeyed with me through these tales, I offer this moment of quiet reflection and this invitation. The story does not end here. Our shared voyage continues across stars and dimensions, shaped by our collective imagination and resolve. If the resonance of this narrative stirred something within you, curiosity, wonder, a spark of possibility, I encourage you to engage with this community. Like this transmission, to affirm your connection, subscribe to this channel to remain at the forefront of stories that challenge and inspire. Share your theories, your visions, your questions in the comments below, for it is through dialogue that we weave the next threads of the cosmic tapestry. In this moment, I stand not as a solitary figure, but as a voice among many, a beacon in the ever-expanding network of life. Let us move forward together, guided by hope, trust, and the unyielding desire to explore not only the stars but the depths within ourselves. The future is not a destination but a horizon, forever receding, inviting us to step boldly into the unknown.